getting rid of particulates out there, and really, really useful. But they've got to not become litter traps. And if we can have a design that isn't a litter trap, it's much, much easier to get highways on site, because they're not picturing loads of extra, people hours needed to keep them clean and tidy. So small practical point, but really keen to see evergreen hedges at roadsides incorporated where we can, particularly, for example, outside the Arndale Centre. We're integrating some kind of cunning, and if anyone knows of a design of this, I'd be really keen to hear about it. Some cunning guardrail come hedge design that can kind of combine the two functions, taking up not a huge amount of space. That's a challenge for us, isn't it, as a group to find? But that would be perfect, because there is a safety issue. The A660 is 25,000 vehicle movements a day, and there is a safety issue. But if we could combine the two, that would be fantastic. On that, I'm off to talk about neighbourhood planning. I'll see you all very, very shortly.
Thanks, Neil. Okay, great. So what I suggest is I'm try and get as many comments as possible. So if you can resist for a second commenting on other people's comments and having a discussion about them, which we will try and have. Let's get as many ideas as possible in the next sort of 10 or 15 minutes. So who wants to go next? Nikki?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to just share an idea that I've had. Well, it's kind of for some time. It sort of really came to me after a visit to Amsterdam, actually, because they have so many green walls there, and I did wonder about the possibility, especially perhaps a collaboration with landlords on this, as they own so much of the housing stock is owned by landlords, but sort of gable ends of houses becoming green walls in some areas, and that was kind of the idea. And I don't know really how feasible it is, but that's an idea that I quite like anyway.
Brilliant. Ideas are what we need at this stage. Yeah, feasibility comes later. Who's next?
Oh,
Liz?
I'll
Sorry,
have a
Francis,
quick,
and then
yeah.
Liz. Go, Francis.
Okay, I was really just thinking about the sort of planting that we would need. So thinking really evergreen rather than, and also perennials. So we're not thinking of annuals the whole time. And evergreen, so that there's a presence there the whole time. And also because they're photosynthesizing all year, there's a bit more carbon capture. And did I think of anything else? The ground cover as well. And then I did send out that article about Cotoneaster franchetti, which apparently is the best carbon capture plant that there is. Brilliant. And so good for evergreen hedging.
Liz?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that on Woodhouse Moor, the part nearest the university, nearest the library pub, there's a couple of big flower beds there, which I'd witnessed weren't being planted. And I thought maybe they'd just sort of let them go to seed a bit. But it turns out they've been wild seed planted. And I haven't actually seen this, but there are some wildflowers coming up, which have presumably been planted by or sown by the council, because in the past they've planted spring bulbs and all that sort of thing and have their normal civic planting. So it looks as though the council are beginning to move in that sort of direction themselves. And I wondered if there was a way in which they could, any land that they own in Headingley, we could talk to them about that and encourage them to do the same in our area.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, just to respond to that, that is a council initiative to do more and more of that. I think one of the largest problems we have, though, is a lot of the wild planting. It's a bit of a misnomer almost, because you kind of think wild planting, you can just kind of plant it and then leave it, and it's fine. And actually, when you leave it, it tends to end up just being like nettles and other stuff, which actually isn't that attractive. So I'm sure if there are particular areas where there are people who can look after it, I think that kind of the Parks Department will be very open to kind of people taking over those with wildflowers. I think there'll be a bit of a reluctance for for someone to just kind of come and plant wildflowers and then leave it, because I think then it would just kind of descend into mess quite quickly. But if people were willing to take ownership, I think that's a conversation people will be really keen to have, definitely.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any more? Nikki? Oh, sorry, Bill, didn't see your hand up there. Go on, Bill, and then Nikki.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need to be thinking a bit longer term as well as what's happening here. And I think one thing that we need to do is to get the Parks Department to think about greening up, not just in parks, but around the city. And I think there's potential for a lot of sort of apprenticeships with sort of a Green New Deal. That money might not be available yet, but I think we should be ready to pounce on that. And I think the combination of the expertise of the Parks Department and local people could make a huge difference.
Thanks, Bill. Nikki?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty much the same thing that I was going to say as Bill. I do think that in an ideal world, which this is a real opportunity for green jobs creation, and I would, you know, like to sort of have discussions around that with the local council and the just generally what the potential is. And it's a kind of long-term vision, but we really have a need for jobs, and it's a crying out, this particular area, for not just retired people who have limited amounts of energy, who tend to be the people who end up doing it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, it's a joyous thing to do, but yeah, I think there's really space for that, and I would really like to see that happening.
Okay, good point. Anybody got any more specific things you'd like to see in certain areas? Again, not just sort of the low-hanging fruit of planting up and so on, but more drastic interventions to green up Headingley. Go on, Nikki.
So I was just, if we're really sort of blue sky thinking, I just want to throw up that ultimately, you know, then it is about, we get a lot of pedestrianisation happening in city centres. We don't get a lot of it happening in neighbourhoods.
Yeah.
So that I know exactly how complicated that is. It's a very aspirational thinking, but if we are thinking like that, and I guess it does also link into Car Free Day as well, because, you know, and the environment and the experience of North Lane when there's no cars on there is quite sensational, actually, you know, as a sort of for a community. So ultimately, yeah, I think I would like to see, you know, pedestrianisation not just being the city centre thing, but something that all local neighbourhoods, all the aspired to 15-minute neighbourhoods can benefit from in terms of a sort of city vision.
Okay. Liz, then Claude.
I guess I've had my say really, but it's just occurred to me that a really good blue sky thinking, it would be nice to think you could get from, say, Far Headingley into the shops, or from crisscrossing Headingley without having to cross the road. So some nice overhead pedestrian crossings, I mean pedestrian bridges, just some really good blue sky thinking.
Yeah, pedestrian routes in general, but
yes,
bridges,
yeah,
why not?
Yeah.
I meant the other Liz, but go on, Liz.
Okay, I was just going to say on a rather more limited scale, in the Cardigan Triangle and sort of around the Brudenell Road area, as people will know, there are road blocks formed by planters, which are very sort of minimal in their appeal at the moment. And it'd be quite nice if we could think of some way of getting people to adopt them, to make them more attractive, grow fruit, well, vegetables maybe in them, and get local areas to sort of well, not buy into them, but adopt them, you know, make them a community focus, a sort of community garden type thing.
Yeah. Claude and then Jonathan.
Well, I really wanted to ask Mohammed what is covered in that LIFE project. Is it at the beginning of the year? And
we'll let Mohammed speak in just 2 minutes. Sorry, I'll keep you stum because then you can absorb all the ideas and respond to some of them. Go on, Jonathan.
Yeah, just about the planters. I wouldn't plant anything in them just yet. So we've come to the end of the first 6 month. I don't know what we call it, a 6 month trial period. And what we're doing is we're taking away what we've been told by a lot of residents, which is a real mixture of positive and negative. And actually we want to, for the most part, we want to keep the roadblocks, but actually replace them with something more permanent. So in some instances, I would love kind of a couple of trees rather than planters, or they may be replaced with, you can get more of a kind of like the stone planters that are, you know, very much more in place. So we're not looking to remove the blocks, as it were, but the wooden planters, which you know, are subject to getting pushed over, vandalized, ripped apart, are hopefully getting replaced with something a bit more durable, I think would be the word. But we're still keeping that kind of green theme, so there will be an opportunity to kind of keep that green space, but just with something more substantial.
Right, that's really helpful. Thanks, John.
Everyone's all residents who live in the Cardigan Triangle and those bits of Hyde Park where they are all getting a letter about this in probably. We signed the letter off yesterday, so probably receiving it in the next week or two.
Great.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mohammed, I've kept you quiet for too long now. So off the leash, tell us a bit about the project, how it might work, but also your response to the problem and the issues, and how we move from that to having some big visions.
Sure. So our students, they are around 27 students, and I think if with my colleague Trudy, if we divide them to 3 groups of 9 students in each group, and they could focus on 3 sites that you suggest us based on your priorities, and if they could focus to improve any issue that you think is more critical in those sites. It could be far Headingley, central Headingley, and south part of Headingley. So if you want them to design for pedestrian, if you want them to tackle air pollution, for example, if we have a nursery or something, and you want students to think about some solutions for that part. So basically, if there is if there are 3 locations that you could identify and you brief the students that we have this problem, they will go and design from September till maybe mid-November or late November, and they will propose to you their design solutions. At the middle of the term, they will come to you and they will present to you their basic design ideas, and they will get your feedback. And at the end of the term, they will present to you their design ideas as a team. So the brief is yours, and you can tell them what problems we have in this specific part or in these 3 sites, and they will try to resolve it with design solutions. It could be air pollution, calming the traffic, pedestrianization. They are landscape architects, so they think with nature-based solutions mostly, I should say. sorry, you're on mute, Tony. Sorry.
Error. There we go. Sorry, rookie error. I don't know if Liz mentioned to you when I worked with your colleagues, we did this project before. We did some initial discussions, as you say, to give the students a brief, but we also had a little time to give them some skills learning about interviewing and getting feedback from people. And then if all of us in Zero Carbon Headingley and other people in Headingley, we can arrange for the students to do a number of interviews each. So they pick up all these ideas and lots of ideas before they go out and get their first design. So one of the things we'll be asking before it starts is if any of you would be willing to be interviewed by a student and tell them how, you know, what your ideas are, either locally where you live or for the whole of Headingley. And then that all gets fed into the design bits of it. And as Mohammed says, we could maybe divide it up into three locations and 3 different teams of students, 1 for each location, maybe.
Can I ask how big a location would we be looking at? What sort of size of area, or?
It could be a courtyard, so maybe 10 meters time 10 meters, okay. But it could be a sidewalk, it could be maybe a junction, it could be a green yard of a school. So it's mostly outdoor spaces. I wanted to show you, maybe if can I share my screen for maybe 1 minute to show you what we did last year?
Sure.
What projects we had. Okay, so last year, this is Leeds East Academy, and this is a school and secondary school, and they asked us that to design this part of their school. Here is a fence, so this is the border of the school. So they asked us to design only this part. This is a very big, very large area, but this was one of our projects. We had another project, if I could find it on Google Map. We had contacts with Canal and River Trust, and we were designing an area like this for Canal and River Trust. And our third project was in Meanwood. This is Waitrose, and the big Waitrose here, and our students designed this courtyard. They added vegetation, different elements to this courtyard to make it more alive, more to bring a new life to this courtyard. So this is not a very big area. I just wanted to show you that this site could be as small as this area. Some students worked on this paved sidewalk to avoid cars parking here, and they added vegetation here, but most of the students worked on this, on the interior part of the courtyard. So these are the scales. From this big scale to this small, this could, all of these could work for us.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I stop.
So I think what we need to do before the project starts is to sort of get a map out and decide on the boundary of the sort of 3 big chunks that we'll work on, as you say, maybe Far Headingley, Central Headingley, and South Headingley, or whatever it might be. And then within each of those, try and get enough people for the team of students to interview and get more ideas from before they start designing. And some of the students could work on small patches of that have been identified, and maybe some could work on the bigger vision of the road. Anyway, we'll get together and look at producing a brief for that first meeting. So any what's the time? 10 to 8. Any more questions or thoughts to Mohammed, or any more additional comments or thoughts about greening up?
Tony, Mohammed, I just wondered whether, have you got any images of what the students came up with for those 3 sites that you just told us about?
Sure. I will. Let me share my screen to show you, for example, what they did, for example, for the school design. This is their final project. This is the east part of the school. And as I showed you, this is just grass here.
Yeah.
And what they did, they provided different spaces for students. This is an amphitheater. This is a graffiti wall. This is a tennis court. And this is kind of edible garden for students to learn what seeds. Sorry. And sorry, I don't know what I did. It made it blue. Sorry. And these are additional trees that the students added. So these are some visuals that they made with 3D models. These are those edible planters. So this was the school design. And if I show you the courtyard, if I could, this is the courtyard that I showed you. So our students added this vegetation here. They added this pattern to calm the traffic. So this is another corner in Meanwood. So these are all the additional elements that they added to the site. So these are computer models. These are not there. These are what our students added to the site. So yeah, these are more or less how we could propose some solutions for air pollution, for biodiversity. These are their analyses that they will deliver to you at the end of the term. So basic sketches, how they came up with those design solutions and the rationale behind that. And this is the final design, working with the pavement. This is the project that they did in Armley with Canal and River Trust. If I go further, these are their hand sketches. They thought that maybe they could add some temporary cafes. And if I go further to the final design. So some seating areas for people to enjoy the canal. Yeah, more or less, this will be the final output of the students.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. That's really helpful.
That's really good. I mean, they're obviously, you know, part of their training, they're becoming very professional. And I mean, I think particularly the Meanwood ones shows us looking at traffic management and edges of roads and pavements and so on, which I'm sure will be really useful when we look at lots of Headingley areas. So another let's take it till 8 o'clock if people have got more to say about this project, and hopefully you'll all volunteer to be interviewed in September. Any more thoughts and comments, questions, ideas? Les?
Yeah, I'd just say it would be nice if at least one or two of the projects, there would be some chance of actually implementing them. I mean, you know, when we're selecting projects, it would be nice to sort of look at it from the point of view of is there a fighting chance, you know, we'll get some of this done when the students are finished. It's really lovely. I mean, obviously, it's great that the students will produce these really good designs and very professional, but even better for them and for us if we can follow up and see at least some of it done.
Is this a question for Jonathan, perhaps?
Well, I think there's several stages. I mean, you can say what you like, Jonathan. I'm not trying to stop you, but I mean, I think we're not saying we're going to produce a vision and then just implement it. But there's lots of steps. But once we've got a vision or visions, because there'll be loads of different ideas, then I think as a community group, we're in a position to start talking about them and look at what is feasible and look at what council can do, what we can do, where we can get money from, etc., etc. So rather than think of it as this is just a project we're going to get ideas and do, I think I would suggest that we look at it as helping us to get a vision for the long-term future. These are some of the things we would like to see in Headingley. And now we're in a position to start talking about it with relevant authorities. And I sincerely hope we'll get some ideas that we can implement, but I don't think it's as simple as saying, here's the answer and council, right, you go away and do it.
Just on that point, we do actually have these a few little pots of money that are of actually, you know, I say little pots, you know, some of them are 40-50 grand that are quite it's quite narrow what we can spend it on. They're not just things we can just kind of add to the general fund of the council and use, because I think that would have been swallowed up by now. They're things that are really specific, and we have attempted in the past to use this money on some public spaces. There was an area in the Triangle where Sparrow Park is. We tried to use that kind of bit of road next to it to extend, but then I mean, the problem there was there were so many roadworks underneath it. Not roadworks underneath it, it's like there's electricity, gas, like you name it, it's under that road, and that caused problems there. We tried to start a project around the War Memorial to almost create a bit of a Headingley Square, and that faced problems because there was a lot of objections to do with parking, obviously, because people always where they park is always top of most people's lists, sadly. And actually we've almost struggled to spend a bit of this money. So if there were some designs done that have come from the community and they're really feasible and we can do it, that's where we can kind of step in and hopefully back these projects. So, you know, in most circumstances, funding is usually the hardest element, but in some ways, in this one, funding's kind of the easiest one. It's finding a place where to spend it. It's everyone will know here that Headingley just doesn't have a huge amount of green spaces and public spaces to spend this sort of money on. So if some ideas come forward, we'd be really keen on them, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, that's very encouraging to hear. Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that we do actually need to sort of remove tarmac and actually sort of green up spaces for the longer term. What really what I really liked about what the students are doing is the 3D design to actually show what an area can be like. And you know it's important because organisations like the airport and the city council in the city centre and so on put a lot of effort into making attractive looking spaces. And if we want to sell the idea to sort of local people and people who use a particular space, we actually need these sort of attractive images, I think. And I think, yeah, I'm really excited about what the Beckett University is aiming to do.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, and I think that point about that we need to engage with a wider community in Headingley and get support for the ideas we come up with is a really important one. And as you say, those visual images will be really, really helpful in doing that. Thank you. Any other comments or questions or thoughts? Okay, so just as a kind of indicative straw poll, if it was September now and we've got a bunch of students who want to talk to people, how many people, if you would be willing to be interviewed by a student about your ideas, put your hand up in the air. Most people, almost everybody. Great, thank you.
Sorry, Tony, and maybe what they could do is, I mean, the Greening Up group meets separately and the Getting Around Headingley group meet separately, so the students could actually meet with people and talk to them at those meetings, couldn't they?
Yeah. Well, true, but then if there's 27 students and 10 people in a meeting, I think, you know, one-to-ones or 3 students to 1 interview or whatever might be productive. Anyway, I'm sure we can sort that out in September. Okay, is there any last words you want to say, Mohammed?
I just wanted to say that I can divide them to 3 groups. So if it is difficult for you to meet them at one time and because of the COVID, I can bring 9, for example, in the morning, 9 at noon and 9 in the afternoon. So I can arrange them to come.
Right, thank you. Well, I'm sure we can do the details.
They probably all live in Headingley anyway, Mohammed.
Yeah, some of them will, yeah. Okay, so we're just going to have some very quick updates from some of the other work Zero Carbon Headingley has been doing, and any questions or discussion about that, and try and finish in about, let's aim for 20 past. So Bill, do you want to talk about the Getting Around Headingley transport group?
Yeah.
Leave the car-free day. We'll talk about that separately.
Right, yeah. In the spring, we spent a lot of time deciding what to contribute to the Leeds transport strategy. And the results of that should be published fairly soon now. And then we will want to see how they responded to our response, in fact, connecting Leeds, that is. There's also sort of on a big scale, there's an air quality action plan that the council is just producing, which is very poor in that it's not an action plan at all. It's a wish list mainly of what council departments might do and drawn up without any consultation. Our main work though is around sort of low traffic neighbourhoods. We're working closely with North West Leeds Transport Forum now. We're looking at what we can do in response to the impact of Leeds, of Headingley Stadium events, which impact a very large sort of area. And it means that it's going to be very difficult to implement low traffic neighbourhoods if there's going to be these floods of cars every now and again. Yeah, really, one of the things that we're really keen to do is to link in with Greening Up, so that instead of just having a low traffic neighbourhood and just have more local car parking for a particular street, we actually change the character of the street, and that people can actually see how their quality of life is going to be improved, because it is going to be sort of spaces where children can play, where the environment is better, where the air is cleaner, and so on. So that's in a nutshell what we're doing.
Brilliant, thanks, Bill. Any questions or comments to Bill? Neil?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think looking at low traffic neighbourhoods, obviously we're about to go out to consultation for at the end of the trial. We're past the end of the trial period, so they'll keep an eye out for those kind of that material coming out. I mean, consultation is difficult in a pandemic, but at least we're getting to more, shall we say, normal times now, ish, somewhat. So we'll be asking a lot of questions. Connecting leads will be to the areas where they've already been implemented, and with a view to what's the next stage, where do we take them further. I certainly think as a concept, they're not without controversy. Myself and Jonathan and Al have received some very creative swearing in many emails about them. But that said, once you get past the sort of the shouty, angry people who don't like any kind of change, I think there's a solid core of people who recognise the benefits that a low traffic neighbourhood brings. And what's interesting is in Hyde Park, and we certainly like to see areas showing an interest in other parts of North West Leeds for sure. But in areas of Hyde Park, even if people are not supportive of the barriers and the reduced rat running, because they see it as an impingement on their mobility, what they're suddenly a lot more interested in is comprehensive parking approaches, mixtures of residence parking, time bays, free bays. Whereas previously we've mentioned a residence parking scheme in a community meeting in Hyde Park, and it was like the Civil War all of a sudden. You know, whereas people have thought, well, actually, maybe controls on parking are not such a bad thing, and maybe maybe that's something we should consider. But certainly we've seen commuter through traffic reduce because of the low traffic neighbourhood, and that's a real positive. And to be honest, in the areas we've implemented in Hyde Park, there are an opportunity for introducing much improved little green oases, I think, when you think of some of the areas where the barriers are. So keep an eye on that, out for consultation on that. I think, Bill, you've been a little bit mean towards the clean air strategy that the council's putting out. I mean, there's an awful lot we're doing with respect to clean air, and particularly as it wraps up very tightly with our decarbonisation efforts. So, I mean, by all means, get people have their say on that. When we do all these consultations, and also just as an addendum, one thing to be really good if people keep an eye out for is we're about to go out to consultation on our climate emergencies. Excuse me, my dinner is repeating me, I do apologise. Our climate emergency-led local plan review. For folks who don't know, I chair the city's development plan panel as well as the climate change committee. And we're wanting to see, hoping that we'll get from the climate aware ecosystem in Leeds, we'll get a lot of strong responses, because when we go to inspection with very strong, future housing should be zero carbon type policies, we're far better equipped to win those arguments with the planning inspectorate, the government's planning inspectorate, if we have a strong sort of citizen response to these policies. So we're looking to people to really help with that. That would make our lives immeasurably easier to get those policies so they end up as the city's statutory development plan with enormous amount of weight. Because as you all know, planning decisions last lifetimes. So there's just a few points there, Tony, and obviously we can talk about Car-Free Day at an appropriate juncture.
Can I just come back very briefly on one thing about the air quality? I mean, I welcome Neil's other response, but it was called the final draft of an action plan, and it's not an action plan at all. It's just, it's more like a wish list or something. No targets or timescales or anything like that.
Okay. Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of that particular publication document, I was a little bit concerned that there didn't seem to be anything that really for Headingley in it. Now, I know that Headingley, it's not because I think Headingley is a priority, but obviously you would be concerned about that. As we are zero carbon Headingley, you would at least notice that. There was reference to low traffic neighbourhoods in general, but beyond that, there didn't seem to me to be a way in for us as a group to engage with that document. But that was my response. But yeah.
Okay. Do you want to say any more, Neil?
Oh, well, I mean, look, if there's specific areas people want to point out to us, then yeah, by all means, please do so, and then we can have a conversation going forward.
Okay. We haven't got a detailed update on the housing because Matthew's not here, but I think the scheme that we've started, which is accrediting properties with using the sustainability index for environmental performance index for housing, is going well, and we hear that students are sort of interested in choosing houses that or flats or house shares that have a higher sustainability performance, environmental performance certificate, C and above. So I think early days, but it does seem to be having some impact, and Matthew will be able to tell us more at the next meeting. Okay, so let's go on to Car Free Day. So many of you remember our early on in our life as Zero Carbon Headingley, a fantastic event 2 years ago in September at Car Free Day, where North Lane was closed off and we had stalls and music and information and the very exciting experience of walking down the middle of North Lane without being run over. And we're planning, hoping and planning for another one on the 19th of September, which is quite soon. We have filled in the form that you have to do through the authority to the Safety Advisory Group, is it? SAG, yeah. Anyway, whatever, I think it's Safety Advisory Group. Matthew's filled it in and sent it off. We have had a fairly negative response from Highways, but not that was before we filled in the form. So we're just about to try and involve Hart, who are very keen, and contact stall holders and musicians and ask for volunteers for stewards and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know whether Neil or Jonathan have got anything to say about what we can do about Highways and how likely it is to persuade Highways that we can go ahead.
Do you want the clean
Keep
version?
It clean. Keep it clean.
So I think have we had an interim response since we submitted the application? Since
no,
Matthew did?
Don't think so, no.
Okay. Well, I'll chase that up with see where they are with that, because yeah, I did see the emails that were zipping around, and I did think it was a touch overly negative. But then see, the thing about Highways is, right, all the fun groovy people are in connecting Leeds, right? And all the dour Highways engineers are in Highways. And if you have that sort of mental division in your head, because what are connecting Leeds all about? It's about diverting highway space to pedestrians and cyclists and you know, electrified public transport. What are Highways obsessed with? Cars and movement. And it's interesting, isn't it? There's a bit of dichotomy. So probably folks, the best thing we could do is I will chase Highways to speed along their response. Just as a bit of background, because obviously we're in the steering group, we've had a few more discussions. So obviously Car Free Day it takes a considerable amount of effort and work and whatnot, and there's a physical presence on the day, but there's legal work in the background to prepare the road traffic orders. So that comes to a cost of around about £1,000. So councillors we've met half of that cost from our own councillors' funds, and then I think HDT or others are meeting the other half of the cost, because obviously we only, I mean, to put it bluntly, funds are stretched at the council, and I know £1,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you view £1,000 today as the same value as about £20,000 in 2010, that might give you some idea of where we are in budget terms. And the difference between now and 2 years ago is one of the other differences rather is a very happy difference. Now we have so much decarbonisation work going on and projects going on that our budgets and staff are really stretched, and that's a very good, happy problem to have, frankly.
Apologies for interrupting, but I don't think the money's the issue.
No. But
we're happy to raise the other half, and I think the issue is having enough time to plan it, with highways saying that they will do the work for the road closures.
Yeah, it's us doing the other half of it, isn't it? The rest of the actual day itself.
Yeah.
So we probably best thing for councils to do is we can chase highways for their response, so we can get that side of things moving, because nothing can happen without that side of things being squared away.
Yeah.
We're also happy to contribute to help along with all the more fun things, shall we say. And it was a great day 2 years ago. And in the meeting, do you remember we kept saying last year when it happened, and obviously because 2020 and 2021 have kind of merged into this large amorphous lump, we were actually talking about 2019, and that was quite interesting psychologically. But yeah, so happy to what everyone's wants to do and the fun we can have on the day.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it's just the only thing I think that we're worried about is the time scale involved in planning.
Yeah.
We just need, even if all the details haven't been worked out, if we, sorry, am I talking over somebody? No, even if all the details haven't been worked out, if we know it's going ahead, we can get on with getting musicians and chairs and first aid and all that stuff sorted. So we'll look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks, Neil. The only other update, I think, and other people can join in, is just to say that the steering group is very enthusiastic and keen to welcome new members. We meet every month on a Wednesday, usually mid to late afternoon. Next one is the 28th. We're particularly interested in anybody who's got some social media skills and can help with the Facebook and newsletter stuff, but anybody who wants to come along and help with the discussions would be very welcome. So just let me or Matthew or Liz or anybody else know, or Bill, if you'd like to get involved with the steering group. And hopefully you'll all note down the 19th of September, and so, you know, everybody can do something to help with it with the day. Are there any other thoughts, comments, questions, or things people want to say before we close and let you go outside while it's still sunny? A bit. Oh,
I'd just like to thank Mohammed in particular, because I think it sounds
Yeah.
really exciting to have something to work towards, even if, you know, we don't get anything practical on the ground in the first year, but it's creating that ambition, I think. So
Yes.
that sounds really
thank
good.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, we echo that. Yeah, it's been really helpful to have you here, Mohammed. Thanks for coming, and really look forward to you and your gaggle of students arriving in Headingley in September.
Hopefully, yeah. I should thank you all. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks everybody very much for giving up your time, and see you all soon.
Yeah. See you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.